In the store, no one understood the Lebanese buyer until the cleaner offered coffee in Arabic. Sarah Johnson Williams watched the confusion unfold at the luxury car dealership where she had worked as a cleaner for 15 years. The most experienced salespeople in New York City rushed back and forth, trying to communicate with a customer who had just arrived, but none of them could understand a word he was saying. It was when she heard the first words in Arabic that her heart raced. The man, dressed in traditional white garments and speaking a language she knew very well, seemed increasingly frustrated by the lack of communication. Without a second thought, Sarah dropped her mop and approached him, offering a cup of coffee while murmuring in perfect Arabic. "Ahlan wa sahlan, kaif halak," she said with a shy smile, handing him the steaming cup. The man's face instantly lit up. His eyes filled with tears, and he replied in Arabic, his voice trembling with emotion, silencing the entire showroom. "Shukran, shukran jazilan," he repeated, holding the cup as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. Richard Parker, the dealership manager, watched the scene with a mix of shock and irritation. How could a mere cleaner be speaking fluently with a customer who was likely worth millions? He quickly stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "Sarah, return to your work immediately," he ordered in a low but firm voice. "The salesman can handle this." The customer, whose name was Karim Nadim, immediately shook his head and said something in Arabic that none of the salesmen understood. Sarah translated hesitantly. "He said he only wants to speak with me, Mr. Richard. He doesn't want to talk to anyone else." The tension in the air was palpable. The salesman, who had always treated Sarah with disdain, now looked at her with a mix of envy and desperation. Michael Thomas, the most experienced salesman in the store, whispered to his colleague, "How is it possible this woman speaks Arabic? She barely finished middle school." Sarah pretended not to hear the comment, but the words cut like a knife. All these years, she had been invisible to those men in suits. She was just the woman who mopped the floors, emptied the trash, and made the coffee. They never imagined she could have a story, a life, knowledge they didn't possess. Karim continued speaking in Arabic, gesturing toward the cars. Sarah listened carefully, mentally translating each word. He was looking for something very specific, a car for someone very special, but couldn't find what he wanted in that store. "He's searching for a gift for an important person," Sarah explained to Richard, who watched her with growing disbelief. "But none of the cars here suit his needs." "That's impossible," Michael Thomas retorted, stepping closer to the group. "We have the best luxury cars in all of New York City. Luxury cars, turbo motors, premium wheels, Speedcraft. What else could he want?" Sarah spoke a bit more with Karim in Arabic before responding, "He doesn't want new cars. He's looking for a classic from the 60s, a specific model that holds special meaning." The revelation left everyone stunned. A new car dealership was definitely not the place to find restored classics. Richard began to see $1 million sale slipping through his fingers. "Ask him which models he has in mind," Richard said, trying to stay calm. "Maybe we can arrange a special order." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. As Sarah spoke with Karim, she discovered the car he was searching for was for his mother, an elderly woman who had spent her youth in the United States before returning to her homeland. She always spoke nostalgically about a turquoise blue Chevrolet Impala 1966 that her late husband had owned before they moved. "My mother is very sick," explained Karim in Lebanese, his voice choked. "The doctors say she doesn't have much time. I wanted to give her this gift so she could relive the happy memories of when she was young here in the US." Sarah felt her heart tighten. Karim's story painfully echoed her own life. For 3 years, she had cared for Mrs. Layla, a Lebanese woman who lived in the neighborhood. It was while caring for her that Sarah learned the language and understood the deep longing immigrants carry in their hearts. "I know someone who restores classic cars," said Sarah in Lebanese, hesitating for a moment before continuing. "He's an older man who has a shop in my neighborhood. He specializes in cars from the 60s. Karim's eyes lit up with hope. He held Sarah's hands in his, speaking quickly in Lebanese, begging her to help him find this restorer. Richard watched the conversation without understanding a word, but he could tell from their body language that something important was happening. His frustration grew by the minute. "Sarah, you can't abandon your post to go running around with customers," he said, raising his voice. "Your job is here cleaning this store." "But Mr. Richard, he really needs my help," Sarah replied, for the first time in 15 years standing up to the manager. "It's about his mother, who's very sick." "I don't care," Richard cut in coldly. "You're paid to clean, not to play translator. If he wants to buy a car, he can learn English or bring a professional translator." The cruelty of Richard's words echoed through the showroom. Karim didn't understand English, but he perfectly grasped the aggressive, disrespectful tone the manager used with Sarah. He said something in Lebanese that made Sarah blush. "What did he say?" asked Michael Thomas, curious. "He said that in his country, people like Mr. Richard would be considered rude for treating a woman like that," translated Sarah, lowering her eyes. The tension grew even thicker. Richard was red with anger, but he couldn't take it out on the customer. Karim then made an unexpected offer. He wanted to hire Sarah as his interpreter and personal assistant during his stay in the US, and he would pay generously for her services. "That's out of the question," Richard said immediately. "Sarah has a work contract with us. She can't just leave to work for someone else." "Actually, Mr. Richard," Sarah replied in a voice that surprised everyone with its firmness, "I can. My contract allows side jobs during my free time, and today is my day off." The lie came naturally. Sarah knew it wasn't her day off, but she also knew Richard wouldn't remember her exact schedule. For 15 years, she had been so invisible that no one paid attention to her hours. Karim insisted they needed to go immediately to see the cars available at the restorer's shop. Every day was precious, given his mother's condition. Sarah was torn between loyalty to the job that supported her family and the chance to help someone who truly needed it. "If you leave now, you're fired," Richard threatened, playing his final card. Sarah looked at Karim, who watched her with hope in his eyes. Then she glanced at the salesman who had always looked down on her, at the manager who treated her like she was invisible, at the dealership where she had spent the best years of her life being humiliated daily. "Then so be it," she said, taking off her apron and leaving it on the counter. "I'm going to help this gentleman because it's the right thing to do." The silence that followed was deafening. No one expected the meek Sarah Johnson Williams to have the courage to face the threat of dismissal. Karim smiled and said something in Lebanese that she translated. He said, "God blesses those who help the needy, and that I don't need to worry about money." Richard watched in disbelief as Karim pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to Sarah. Inside was more money than she earned in 6 months of work, just as an advance for her translation services. "This is absurd," murmured Michael Thomas, "a cleaner earning more in one day than we make in months." But Karim wasn't finished. He turned directly to Richard, and even though he spoke in Lebanese, his tone made it clear he was issuing an ultimatum. Sarah translated, "He said he's very disappointed with how you treated me, and that people like you don't deserve his trust in business." The irony of the situation wasn't lost on anyone. The salesman who had worked so hard to impress the millionaire client now watched as he left the store alongside the cleaner they had always looked down on. On the way to Mr. Frank's workshop, Sarah told Karim about Mrs. Layla, the Lebanese woman she had cared for. She explained how she had learned the language by listening to the stories the old woman told about her youth in Lebanon and the happy years she spent in the United States. "Mrs. Layla always talked about a turquoise blue Chevrolet Impala," Sarah said in Lebanese. "It was her husband's. She said that car represented the freedom and dreams they had when they arrived in the United States." Karim stopped walking. His eyes filled with tears, and he looked at Sarah as if he had seen a ghost. "What was her full name?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Layla Nadim," Sarah answered without thinking. "Why? Did you know her?" The world seemed to stop. Karim leaned against a lamppost, trying to process the information. Nadim was his last name, and he knew his mother had lived in the United States decades ago before he was born. "You took care of my mother," he whispered in Lebanese. "You took care of my mother and I didn't know." The revelation hit Sarah like lightning. Mrs. Layla had always spoken of her son who lived far away, but Sarah never imagined she would meet him one day. Fate had intertwined their lives in a way neither could have predicted. "She always talked about you," Sarah said, now crying too. "She showed me your pictures and said how proud she was of the man you became. She died saying your name." Karim broke down in sobs. For years he had carried the guilt of not being there in his mother's final moments. Work, business, family obligations back home, there was always an excuse to postpone the visit that never happened. "I should have been there," he murmured through tears. "I should have taken care of her." "But you were," Sarah said, holding his hands. "Through the love she felt for you. Every day she spoke of how special you were, how hard you worked to give your family a better life. She didn't die abandoned. She died knowing she was loved." There, on a sidewalk in New York City, two people who had met by chance discovered their lives were connected by bonds deeper than any coincidence could explain. Karim realized that finding Sarah hadn't been luck. It had been his mother, somehow guiding him to the person who had cared for her so tenderly. Mr. Frank's workshop was on a narrow street in Sarah's neighborhood. It was a simple place but well known among local vintage car collectors. When they arrived, they found a young man around 25 years old tinkering under the hood of a Ford Mustang 1969. "Excuse me," Sarah said, "we're looking for Mr. Frank." The young man slid out from under the car, wiping his hands on a grease-stained rag. "Mr. Frank was my grandfather," he replied sadly. "He passed away last month. I'm Jason, trying to keep his business going, but it's not easy." The news hit Sarah hard. Mr. Frank had been like a father to her when she first moved to the neighborhood. He always greeted her when she passed by the shop, sometimes even helped with small repairs at her place. Jason explained he'd inherited the garage, but lacked his grandfather's experience. Debts were piling up, and he was considering selling everything to find another job. But when Karim asked about 1960s cars, the young man's eyes lit up. "Grandpa left behind some special cars," Jason said, pointing to a shed out back. "There were projects he never finished before he passed." In the shed, covered by a dusty tarp, was exactly what Karim had been searching for. A turquoise blue 1966 Chevrolet Impala in pristine condition. It was identical to the one Mrs. Layla always described so fondly. "My God," Sarah whispered in English, then repeated in Arabic for Karim. Jason explained that car had been his grandfather's most special project. A Lebanese woman had brought photos of her late husband's car and asked him to find an exact match to restore. She paid up front, but passed away before the work was finished. "Her name was Layla," Jason said, rummaging through a drawer full of papers. "Layla Nadim. She said one day someone from her family would come for it." Karim could barely speak. His mother had commissioned the restoration of her own birthday gift. Somehow she'd known he'd come to the United States and find this car. "How much do you want for it?" Karim asked in Arabic, which Sarah translated. Jason hesitated. He knew the car's true value, but also the urgent debts he faced. "I can do $50,000, he said, far less than the car was worth. Sarah immediately realized Jason was practically giving it away out of desperation. She whispered to Karim in Arabic, "He's asking way too little. This car is worth at least $200,000. The boy's in financial trouble." Karim smiled. His mother hadn't raised a son who'd take advantage of someone's hardship. "Tell him I'll pay $300,000, Karim said. "And if he agrees, I want to hire him to maintain other cars I plan to bring to the US. When Sarah translated, Jason thought he'd misheard. $300,000, but Mom, I only asked for 50. "He knows," Sarah said, smiling. "But he says honest people deserve to be rewarded." Jason began to cry. With that money, he could pay all his debts, modernize the shop, and hire help. His grandfather's dream of running the best restoration garage in the area could finally come true. As Jason prepared the car's paperwork, Karim got a call that changed everything. On the other end, a voice spoke rapidly in Arabic. Sarah saw his face go pale. "What happened?" she asked. "My mother," he said, voice breaking. "She's taken a turn. The doctors say she may not make it through the week. I need to go back immediately." The situation grew complicated. Karim had to leave but didn't want to abandon the car. Trusting someone he'd just met with such an important transaction felt too risky. "I'll handle everything," Sarah said without hesitation. "I'll finalize the paperwork, arrange transport, whatever's needed." "But you barely know me," Karim replied. "How can I ask that of you?" "Because you cared for your mother through your love, and I cared for her through my presence," said Sarah, holding his hands. "Now I'll take care of the last gift you'll share." Karim opened his wallet and took out a limitless credit card, handing it to Sarah along with a signed power of attorney. "Do whatever is necessary," he said. "I trust you as I trusted the woman who cared for my mother." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. As Karim prepared to leave for the airport, Richard appeared at the shop accompanied by 2 security guards from the dealership. "Sarah Johnson Williams," he said authoritatively, "you're fired and will come with me right now to return your uniform and clear out your locker." The manager's sudden arrival created terrible tension. Sarah was in the middle of the most important transaction of her life, helping someone who truly needed it, and now she was being threatened by someone who had humiliated her for 15 years. "I'm not going anywhere," said Sarah, surprising even herself with the firmness in her voice. "I have a commitment here." "You're nothing but a delusional cleaner," Richard shouted. "Do you think because you spoke a few words in Lebanese you've become someone important? You're nothing. You've always been nothing. And you always will be nothing." Richard's words cut deep, but this time Sarah didn't let them shake her. 15 years of humiliation ended in that moment. "Maybe I'm nothing to you," she replied, "but to the family I'm helping, I'm everything they have right now." Karim watched the argument without understanding English, but clearly saw Richard disrespecting Sarah. He said something in Arabic that made Sarah smile for the first time since the manager arrived. "What did he say?" Richard asked, irritated. "He said men like you exist in every country, but they're always defeated by people like me," Sarah translated. Richard turned red with anger. He gestured to the security guards who moved towards Sarah. "Take her out of here by force if necessary," he ordered. That's when Jason intervened. The young man, who had grown up on the streets of the neighborhood, wasn't about to let his shop be invaded by bullies. "This is private property," he said, picking up a tire iron, "and you weren't invited in." "Who do you think you are, kid?" Richard shot back. "I own this shop and I'm closing a $300,000 deal with this lady and this gentleman," Jason replied firmly. "If you don't leave, I'll call the whole neighborhood." The threat worked. Richard knew that in a fight at a local repair shop, he'd be the one losing. But before leaving, he made one last threat. "Sarah, you'll never find work in New York City again. I'll make sure of it personally." After Richard left, Karim had to rush to the airport. Before going, he made an unexpected offer. "Sarah, when I return from my mother's funeral, I want you to come work with me. I need someone trustworthy to handle my business in the United States." "But I don't understand business," Sarah protested. "You understand people," Karim replied, "and that's more important than any degree." The offer included a salary 20 times what she made at the dealership, a house, a car, and health insurance for her entire family. It was a dream opportunity, but Sarah hesitated. "What about my co-workers at the dealership?" she asked. "They may not have treated me well, but some are good people deep down." "Sarah," Karim said gently, "you can't live your life worrying about people who never worried about you." Even so, she asked for time to think. Karim left for the airport, leaving Sarah with Jason at the workshop, surrounded by a responsibility she never imagined having. In the following days, Sarah discovered that handling the paperwork for a $300,000 car was far more complicated than she'd thought. She had to visit notary offices, banks, and traffic agencies, all in Karim's name. Everywhere she went, people questioned how a simple woman had obtained a power of attorney for something so valuable. "Are you sure you're not being tricked?" the bank manager asked. "These scams involving foreigners are very common." Sarah felt humiliated with every question but pressed on. She had given her word to Karim and wouldn't fail. Jason became her ally in this journey. The young man admired Sarah's determination and helped whenever he could. Together, they discovered the world of classic cars was more complicated than they'd imagined. To transport the car to the port, Jason explained, we'll need a specialized shipping company, and it's not cheap. Sarah used the credit card Karim had left, but every expense made her nervous. What if she was spending too much? What if Karim was unhappy when he returned? A week later, Karim called from abroad. His mother had passed away 2 days after he arrived. The funeral had been beautiful, with hundreds paying their last respects, but he was devastated. She asked about you, he told Sarah over the international call. In her final hours, she kept asking about the dear American woman who took care of her. Sarah cried hearing this. Mrs. Layla had been much more than an employer. She'd been like a second mother. The car is ready to be shipped, Sarah reported. Jason did a wonderful job. It's exactly as your mother described. Don't send it, Karim said, surprising her. What do you mean? I want you to keep it there, he explained. I'm going to build a memorial for my mother in the United States, in the neighborhood where she was happy. The car will be displayed there so people can see the love story between a Lebanese woman and her new homeland. The idea was beautiful, but brought new challenges. Karim wanted to buy land in the neighborhood for the memorial and needed someone trustworthy to handle the negotiations. I don't know anything about buying land, Sarah protested. You'll learn, Karim said, and I'll hire the best lawyers and architects to help you. Meanwhile, Sarah's life in the neighborhood had completely changed. News that she was handling business for a Lebanese millionaire spread quickly. Some looked at her with admiration, others with envy. Look at Sarah, commented Mrs. Wilson, the neighbor. 15 years scrubbing floors and now she's a businesswoman. Must have been something going on with that Lebanese man, old Jimmy from the corner bar insinuated maliciously. The hurtful comments stung, but Sarah tried to ignore them. She had important work to do. Jason became her partner in this new venture. Together they visited properties, spoke with realtors, and studied blueprints. The young mechanic revealed a natural business sense his grandfather had never nurtured. You know, Sarah, he said one day, I think this lot here would be perfect. It's on a busy corner, but has green space behind it for the memorial. Sarah agreed. The lot was just 2 blocks from the house where Mrs. Layla had lived. It would be the perfect place to honor her. But when they went to close the deal, they learned the owner had changed his mind. Someone had offered much more money for the property. Who made the offer? Sarah asked. Her group of investors from downtown, the embarrassed realtor replied. They want to build a commercial complex. Sarah suspected who might be behind this sabotage. Her suspicions were confirmed when she received a call from Michael Thomas, the salesman at the dealership. Sarah, you need to accept that you don't belong in this world, he said with fake concern. Simple people like us shouldn't meddle with millions of dollars. You're going to get hurt. Who told you to call me? Sarah asked directly. Richard is worried about you, lied Michael Thomas. He knows you're a good person and doesn't want to see you being fooled. Richard fired me and said he'd ruin me, Sarah reminded him. Now he's worried about me. Look, Sarah, I'll be straight with you, said Michael Thomas, dropping the act. That Lebanese man used you. He's never coming back. You're taking care of a memorial that will never exist, spending money that isn't yours. When the bill comes due, you'll be the one paying. The words planted a seed of doubt in Sarah's heart. What if Michael Thomas was right? What if Karim had really used her? What if she was just an innocent being fooled by an international scammer? That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She went over every conversation she'd had with Karim, every document he'd left behind. Everything seemed legitimate, but what if she was being naive? The next morning, Jason noticed something was wrong. You look like you didn't sleep, he said. Sarah told him about Michael Thomas's call and her doubts. Jason listened carefully before responding. Sarah, I saw the way that man looked at you when he talked about his mother. It wasn't an act, it was real love and sincere gratitude. But what if nothing? Jason interrupted. You took care of his mother when he couldn't be here. That created a debt he wants to repay, not with money but with respect and opportunity. Jason's words made sense, but Sarah was still shaken. Then she received a call that changed everything. Hello, Mrs. Sarah, said a woman's voice on the other end. This is the International Relations Office at the consulate. Mr. Karim Nadim asked us to contact you. Sarah froze. Was there a problem with the paperwork? He wants to confirm if you've received the bank transfer, the employee continued. What transfer? $500,000 to your personal account. It's payment for services rendered so far according to the service contract he signed. Sarah nearly fainted. $500,000 in her account? She didn't even know such a contract existed. There must be some mistake, she said. No mistake, ma'am, the employee confirmed. Mr. Nadim was very specific. He said you deserve every penny for taking care of his mother and now overseeing her memorial. When Sarah hung up, she was trembling. Jason, who had overheard the conversation, hugged her. See, he said, people like Richard and Michael Thomas wouldn't understand this in a million years. They think everything in life is about profit and loss. They don't know some things are about gratitude and love. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now back to the story. With the money she received, Sarah could buy not just the original plot, but also the neighboring ones. The memorial for Mrs. Layla would be bigger and more beautiful than anyone had imagined. But not everything was settled. Richard and Michael Thomas hadn't given up on sabotaging Sarah's plans. They spread rumors around the neighborhood that she was laundering money for Lebanese criminals. Did you see? Richard gossiped at the local bar. A cleaning lady with $500,000 in her account? That's not normal. Something's fishy. The rumors reached Sarah's ears and she was devastated. After a lifetime of being honest and hard-working, she was now seen as a criminal by her own neighbors. Don't pay them any mind, Jason comforted her. People always talk badly about what they don't understand. But Sarah was deeply shaken. Maybe she should return the money and go back to her simple life before. At least it was a life without complications. That's when she received an unexpected visit. Mrs. Thompson, a 75-year-old woman who lived on Mrs. Layla's street, knocked on her door. Sarah, my dear, the elderly woman said, I need to talk to you. Mrs. Thompson shared that she had been a close friend of Mrs. Layla for many years. They met every afternoon for tea and to chat about life. Layla always spoke of you, Mrs. Thompson revealed. She said you were like the daughter she never had in the United States. She had plans, you know? What kind of plans? She wanted to leave something for you, the older woman explained, but she didn't have much money, so she made a list of everything she hoped would happen if her son ever came to the United States. Mrs. Thompson pulled out an old yellowed notebook from her bag. She asked me to keep this, she said, handing the notebook to Sarah, and to give it to you if a Lebanese man ever came looking for her. Sarah opened the notebook with trembling hands. The pages were filled with Mrs. Layla's careful handwriting, written in English mixed with Arabic. If my son Karim ever comes to the United States looking for me, please tell him I was happy here. Take care of him as Sarah took care of me. She is a special person with a heart bigger than the world. Tears began to roll down Sarah's face as she kept reading. Sarah taught me that family isn't just blood, it's care. She showed me kindness when I was alone, made me laugh when I was sad. If Karim meets her, he'll understand why I spoke of her so often in my letters. Further on, Mrs. Layla had written a list of her dreams. I wish there were a place in the neighborhood where Lebanese and Americans could get to know each other better. I wish children could learn about our culture. I wish my blue Chevrolet Impala could be found and restored. I wish Sarah knew she saved my final years of life. Sarah couldn't stop crying. Everything Karim was doing had been dreamed up by his mother years before. The memorial, the cultural center, it was all in the pages of that notebook. Layla knew she was going to die, Mrs. Thompson said softly, but she wasn't sad. She said she had lived 2 lives, one in Lebanon and one in the United States, and that both had been blessed. In that moment, Sarah understood she wasn't being used or deceived. She was being blessed. Mrs. Layla had planted seeds of love that were now blooming through her son. With renewed determination, Sarah returned to work on the memorial. Jason had found an architect specializing in buildings that honored Lebanese culture. Together, they created a beautiful plan, a space that would be part memorial, part cultural center, part workshop for classic cars. It's going to be amazing, Jason said, showing her the sketches. Here's Mrs. Layla's Chevrolet Impala. Here's a library with books in Arabic and English. Here's a space for cultural events. And in the back, a workshop where I can restore other cars. The project was ambitious, but with the money Karim had sent and an additional amount he promised to deposit, it could all be done. Meanwhile, Richard intensified his attacks. He went to City Hall to report irregularities in the construction even before it began. He went to the district attorney's office with made-up stories about money laundering. He even went to local newspapers, suggesting stories about suspicious millionaire cleaning ladies. "He's desperate," Jason observed. "You lost the richest client who ever walked into the dealership because of your own prejudice. But he's causing real problems," Sarah worried. "What if he manages to stop the construction?" That's when Karim called from abroad with news that would change everything. "Sarah, I'm coming back to the United States next week," he announced, "and I won't be alone." "What do you mean?" "I'm bringing my whole family," Karim explained. "My brothers, my sisters, my children. We want to see the place where our mother was happy, and we want to meet the woman who cared for her." The thought of meeting Karim's entire family left Sarah both nervous and excited, but it also brought a concern. What if they were disappointed by what they found? What if they expected more than she could offer? "Don't worry," said Jason, noticing her anxiety. "You'll see they're good people, just like Karim." The following week, JFK Airport welcomed the Nadim family. There were 15 of them: Karim, his 3 brothers, 2 sisters, brothers-in-law, sisters-in-law, nieces, and nephews. They all wanted to meet Sarah. The reunion was emotional. The whole family embraced her as if she were one of their own. The women cried as she shared stories about Mrs. Layla's final years. The men treated her with a respect she had never received at the dealership. "Our mother chose well," said Jamal, Karim's eldest brother. "You have a noble heart." The family was impressed with the memorial plans, but they had a suggestion: to make the project even bigger. "We want to create not just a memorial but a cultural exchange center," Karim explained. "A place where Americans can learn about Lebanese culture and Lebanese can learn about American culture." "And we want you to run it all," added Aisha, one of Karim's sisters. "No one understands how to bridge our 2 worlds better than you." The offer was tempting, but Sarah felt unsure. "I don't have the education to run something like this," she protested. "You have something better than education," Jamal replied. "You have life experience and love in your heart." During their stay in the United States, Sarah took the family to see the neighborhood where Mrs. Layla had lived. They visited the house, now rented to another family. They went to the church she attended. They walked through the market where she shopped. At every stop, people shared stories about Mrs. Layla, how she helped neighbors in need, taught children to read Arabic, and made traditional sweets for community celebrations. "She built bridges," Karim observed, "just like you're doing now." On their last day, the Nadim family held a special ceremony. They brought soil from Mrs. Layla's grave to mix with American soil at the memorial site. "This way she'll be present in both countries she loved," Aisha explained, tears in her eyes. Then came an unwelcome surprise. Richard, accompanied by Michael Thomas and some of Sarah's former co-workers from the dealership. "So, this is it," Richard said loudly. "A party for international criminals?" His remark brought an awkward silence. The Nadim family didn't understand English, but sensed something was wrong from the body language. "What's happening?" Karim asked in Arabic. Sarah hesitated but chose honesty. "They still think you're criminals and that I'm involved." Karim was furious. He stepped toward Richard and, despite his heavy accent, made himself clear. "You... very... bad person," he said, pointing at Richard. "Sarah. Good person. You... no understand." Jamal, who spoke fluent English, took over. "Sir, we are a respected family in our country. We own legitimate businesses and have clean records. Your employee Sarah took care of our mother when she was sick and alone. We are here to honor her memory and thank the woman who showed her kindness." Richard turned red, realizing he had gotten himself into a situation bigger than he expected. He tried to backpedal. "Well, if you're a respectable family, now is too late for apologies," Jamal cut in coldly. "You showed your true character when you attacked someone who cannot defend herself." The public humiliation of Richard had consequences he never anticipated. The Nadim family had powerful international connections. One call to the Lebanese consul in the United States was enough to launch an investigation into the false accusations Richard had made against Sarah. 2 weeks later, Richard was fired from the luxury cars dealership for causing a diplomatic incident. Michael Thomas also lost his job for complicity. The company had to publicly apologize to the Nadim family and to Sarah. But for Sarah, revenge brought no satisfaction. She felt bad seeing former colleagues unemployed, even those who had mistreated her. "You're too good for this world," Jason said when she voiced her concerns. "It's not about being good," Sarah replied. "It's about not letting bitterness turn me into a bad person." When the cultural center opened 6 months later, Sarah made sure to invite Richard and Michael Thomas to the ceremony. They arrived with their heads down, expecting public humiliation. Instead, Sarah greeted them with dignity and offered them jobs at the center. "You know sales and customer service," she said. "You can help promote our courses and events." Richard could barely speak. "After everything I did, why are you offering me work?" "Because Mrs. Layla taught me that holding on to grudges is like carrying stones in your heart," Sarah answered. "I'd rather carry flowers." Sarah's generosity deeply moved both men. They accepted the jobs and became some of the center's most dedicated employees. The success of the Layla Nadim Cultural Center surpassed all expectations. Americans lined up to learn Lebanese, Middle Eastern cuisine, and traditional dances. Lebanese residents in the US came to reconnect with their roots and share their traditions. Jason turned the attached workshop into a gathering spot for classic car collectors. Mrs. Layla's 1966 Chevrolet Impala, displayed in a special showcase, became the center's symbol, the union of two cultures through love. Sarah discovered she had a natural talent for administration and international relations. She brokered business deals between American and Lebanese companies, always ensuring both sides benefited. "You've become a bridge," Karim observed during one of his regular visits to the US. "Just as my mother dreamed." 3 years after its opening, the center had expanded to include a bilingual school, a Lebanese-American fusion restaurant, and a student exchange program. Sarah, now the center's executive director, ran her office with the same humility she had when mopping floors at the dealership. She arrived early, greeted every employee by name, and always made time to listen to anyone's personal struggles. "The difference between you and other bosses," said Michael Thomas, now the sales coordinator, "is that you never forgot where you came from." "And I never will," Sarah replied. "Every humiliation I suffered taught me never to humiliate anyone. Every disrespect I received taught me to respect everyone." On the center's 4th anniversary, Karim brought a special surprise. A letter his mother had written years earlier, but was only recently found among her personal belongings. "To Sarah, my Brazilian daughter at heart, if you're reading this letter, it means my son has found you. I know he will take care of you just as you took care of me. You gave me the happiest years of my old age. Now it's your turn to be happy too. Use the love in your heart to build bridges between people. That's why God put us in this world, to unite, not to divide. With all my love and eternal gratitude, Layla Nadim." There wasn't a dry eye at the ceremony when Sarah finished reading the letter aloud, first in English, then in Arabic. "Mrs. Layla knew," whispered Sarah through tears. "She knew all this would happen." "Mothers always know," replied Karim, embracing Sarah as if she were truly his sister. That night, as she walked through the streets of the neighborhood where it all began, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey her life had taken. From a dismissed cleaner to a respected director, from an invisible woman to a bridge between cultures. She stopped in front of the house where Mrs. Layla had lived. The new family there had planted a garden full of Lebanese and American flowers, a colorful mix that perfectly symbolized everything the cultural center stood for. "Thank you, Mrs. Layla," Sarah whispered to the wind, "for teaching me that every person has value, for showing me that love has no borders, for giving me the chance to prove that miracles happen when we treat others with dignity." A gentle breeze rustled the garden flowers, almost like a tender response from the old Lebanese woman who had planted seeds of kindness that now bloomed in abundance. The cultural center continued to grow. It gained international recognition, received awards from diplomatic organizations, and became a model for similar projects in other countries. But for Sarah, the greatest reward was seeing Richard teaching English to Lebanese immigrants with the same patience he once lacked when dealing with her. It was seeing Michael organizing charity events with the same enthusiasm he once reserved only for million-dollar sales. "People can change," she said to Jason, who now ran a network of classic car workshops across the country. "Only when they meet someone who believes they can," he replied wisely. Years passed. Sarah aged with dignity, surrounded by the respect and love of hundreds of people whose lives she had touched. The cultural center became a historical landmark of the city, ensuring Mrs. Layla's story and Sarah's example would be preserved for future generations. One Sunday afternoon, at 70 years old, Sarah was watering the plants in the center's garden when a young woman approached. She was a Lebanese girl about 20, a medical student who regularly visited the center to stay connected to her roots. "Mrs. Sarah," the girl said, "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what, dear?" "For existing," the girl replied simply. "My grandmother told me that when she first came to the United States 40 years ago, people looked at her with suspicion because of the veil she wore. She felt alone and rejected." Sarah stopped watering the plants and gave the girl her full attention. "Then she met a cleaner at a hospital where she had to get tests done," the girl continued. "This cleaner didn't speak Arabic, but she spoke the universal language of kindness. She offered water, helped with paperwork, stayed by her side during medical procedures." Sarah's heart began to race. "That cleaner showed my grandmother that not all Americans were prejudiced, that there were good people willing to help strangers without asking for anything in return." "What was your grandmother's name?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "Amina Khalid," the girl replied, "but everyone called her Mrs. Amina. She passed away last year, but she always spoke of the kind cleaner who changed her first impression of the United States." Sarah remembered. 40 years ago, when she worked at a hospital, she had truly helped a lost and frightened Lebanese lady. She didn't speak Arabic at the time, but offered all the help she could. "She said that cleaning lady planted a seed of hope in her heart," the young woman continued, "and because of that gesture, she decided to stay in the United States and build a family here." Tears began to roll down Sarah's face. Grandma used to say that if she ever found that cleaning lady again, she'd thank her for saving not just her day, but her entire life in the United States. "And why do you think I'm that cleaning lady?" Sarah asked, already knowing the answer. "Because Grandma brought me here a few times before she passed away," the young woman explained. "She would look at you and smile, but she never had the courage to approach you. She said some people are angels in disguise, and that bothering angels might break the magic." Sarah couldn't speak anymore. She was realizing that her acts of kindness had created ripples far greater than she ever imagined. "Grandma asked me to thank you when she was no longer here," the young woman concluded. "She said you'd understand." At that moment, sitting in the garden of the cultural center that had been born from a simple gesture of offering coffee to a stranger, Sarah understood the true magnitude of a life lived with kindness. Every smile offered to someone in sorrow, every hand extended to someone in need, every word of comfort to someone feeling lost. It had all multiplied in ways she could never have foreseen. "Thank you for telling me this," Sarah said, hugging the young woman. "Your grandmother was a special woman, and so are you." "I want to follow both your examples," the young woman said. "I want to be a doctor to care for people, no matter where they come from or what language they speak." "You'll be a wonderful doctor," Sarah assured her, "because you already understand that healing people is more than treating illnesses. It's treating them with dignity." When the young woman left, Sarah remained alone in the garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky in golden hues that made the Lebanese and American flowers glow in perfect harmony. She thought of Mrs. Layla, of Mrs. Amina, of all the lives she had touched without knowing. She thought of Karim and his family, of Jason and his transformation from a desperate young man into a successful businessman. She thought of Richard and Michael Thomas, who had learned to treat people with respect. But most of all, Sarah thought of the most important lesson life had taught her, that every person has value, no matter their job or social standing. That true greatness lies in how we treat those who seemingly have nothing to offer in return. The cultural center would continue to exist long after her physical presence. The bridges she had built between cultures would remain strong. The seeds of kindness she had planted would keep blooming for generations to come. And perhaps someday, a young cleaning lady looked down upon would find her own chance to show the world that a person's worth isn't in the uniform they wear, but in the love they carry in their heart. End of story. Dear listener, now tell us, have you ever experienced a situation like Sarah's? Have you ever been underestimated because of your job or background? Share your story in the comments. Leave a like if this story touched your heart, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring tales of resilience and human dignity.